Good evening. We'll start with today's session with the previous class summary, right? So it is critical for the organizations to align the human resources to better meet the strategic objectives. A failure to do so will always result in energy, time and resources in a wasted list. So, organizations are most likely to achieve this alignment with their corporate objectives when they review their recruitment and selection process. For fit, communicate the mission and vision statements, use joint goal setting, design an appropriate reward system, empower the workforce, promote and develop from within, and use the teams to achieve synergy. Human resources management is the management function that helps the managers to plan, recruit, train, develop, remunerate, maintain, and maintain the members for the of the organization. So HRM has four objectives of societal, organizational, functional, and personal. So and personal. An organization must have set policies, definite procedures, and well defined principles relating to its personals and contribute to the effectiveness, continuity, and stability of the organization. So, I hope you have understood what are the things that we have seen in the previous class has been implemented here, right? The objectives, the four types of objectives we saw in detail. We also saw the differentiation between the human resources management and the personal management. We also saw about the evolution of human resources. All these things are well taken. Okay. So when we look into, you need to answer to the questions that is put forth at the end of every chapter for you, right? So that you will be able to revise accordingly. You need to elaborate on the HR practices of the organizations. So how can we elaborate the HR practices? You need to know the sustainable practices that are said to be followed by the organization. See, the success of the organization will be based on the healthy practices. So it's important that what would be the practices like retention practices or talent nurture practices or you can say training practices. So when you are able to follow these practices and if you are able to provide consistent results, right, for a longer period of time, and you're able to leverage your ideas, you're able to get good outcomes and outputs, then all such practices would be termed as healthy practices, HR practices, that could be defined as. And the evolution of HRM also. So how could you define the evolution of HRM? The evolution of HRM can be defined in we could see here once again. Okay, so right from a welfare officer concept to a human capital broader concept, there are a lot of transformations are said to be viewed. Okay, and how the contribution from an agricultural economy to the industry economy is also said to be well developed, how the economy is boosted, and it was said to be followed. These concepts were followed only in a village within a small community, then how it reached the whole world, how the HR practices have been playing a vital role in the employee development and all will be seeing, right? They are all called as sustainable practices. Okay, it helps the organization to sustain in the markets. Okay, and we talk about the maintenance of employees, working environments, all these things we need to look into. Then distinguish the difference between personal and human resources management. So the difference between the personal and human resources management has to be well taken care actually. Okay, so you need to know which one is the traditional approach, which one is said to be the which one is the modern approach, which one talks about or takes care of the administration and the welfare activities of the organization. All these things we'll be looking into. Okay, so we'll continue with I think we have given you the brief summary of the previous class that has been happening. Okay, so today we'll be looking about the HR policies and procedures. So what are the things, what are the objectives for this session, right? The objectives for at present we'll try to cover as much as possible, right? The objectives for today's session will be first to know about the meaning of HR policies, right? to understand the benefits of HR policies, to know about the HR procedures, and to know the benefits of the HR procedures, you need to know about these concepts in a better manner. Okay, so meaning of HR policies. So HR management are formalized, they are documented. HR management policies are normally documented. Okay, they are well prepared, they are standard procedures, right, which are approved by the board. You have a separate committee for this, right, separate board of people who are well versatile in the various disciplines, right, and they are designated to the CEO, right, so chief execution officer. Then HR management policies complies with the employment, workplace, health and safety, mental wellness, and other legislation as it's applicable to the jurisdiction in which the, what is jurisdiction, the area in which the organization is said to be situated, the place it talks about, right, the companies act and all requires to bring all these things into the purview. Okay, because there is a lot of rules and regulations, or there are chances in which the organizations faces, right, the organization sorry the organization faces these uh, legal suits and all against it. Okay, so human resources policies are formal, they are rules and regulations which we need to comply, which the employees are needed to comply, right, and it talks about it provides a guideline, it's standard procedures that you are expected to follow in hiring, in training, in assessing and rewarding the members of the workforce, right. In case of rewarding the members of the workforce, it talks about the appraisals, right, and the hikes that you give, right. Normally these are not defined, it is said to be defined by the board of management, and the performance appraisal methods and procedures that the organization has within itself. The government cannot intervene into it. Okay, it is always decided by the private people with their board of people, with their people. Okay, so when you talk about the policies when organized and disseminated, it should be easily understandable, right. The organization should be updated, these policies should be updated by the organization, right, and circulated to all the people. Okay, because there are a lot of misunderstandings can be anticipated, because each one will not be able to understand the same things, right, so they will have their own way of understanding, so lot of clarity has to be provided. Okay, and the employers should notify regarding their rights and obligations in the organization. Then the features of HR policy. So what are they? So when you talk about the formalization process, right, it is a complicated process, right, but still no, you need to provide a lot of understanding and clarity for them. So orientation reviews the policies and acceptable behavior of the employees. Okay, second one, HR policies talks about accountability and responsibility, right, so this creates a sense of accountability in each and every employee and allows them to take disciplinary action, including termination in the event and the employee knowingly and willfully violates the company policies. See, we can very much say map these HR policies with that of the discipline, right, with the culture, which are said to be you will be learning or you will be hearing about it in the coming classes. Then the code of conduct. HR policies usually includes a code of conduct that lists prohibited actions or behaviors, how an employee is expected to behave in his organizations, right. You have something called as the organizational behavior, right, that is expected from every employee, right. You're supposed to wear formals, you're not supposed to shout at your higher ups, right, at your superiors. That's all. You need to have a subtle behavior. Okay, talk in a very good manner. All these things are some of the examples that is expected. Okay, and consistency. HR policies tries to bring HR policies tries to bring uniformity or consistency among its employees. Right? It ensures that people follow its rules and regulations. So when talking about more about the HR policies, we can also concentrate on the objectives of HR policies. So Peter Drucker has rightly said that manager must gear its policies and objectives in such a fashion that the employees perform their work and do their assigned task. The first main aim is to place the right person in the right place at the right point of time with right compensation and with the right skill sets to train every employee for current and as well as future jobs. This concentrates on the career development of the personals. Okay, to establish organization as a whole. Okay, whole a coordinated team. Right, teamwork plays a vital role here to look into and ensure proper and adequate supply of tools and equipment. It talks about the resources to create better working conditions for employees, to provide security with opportunity, incentives, rewards, and recognition. Okay, so all these are the things are said to be the main objectives. So, our company is able to achieve these objectives, we need to look into. So the benefits, right? The major benefits of HR policies will be that it is quite clear that HR policies outline what and how HR professionals undertake their day-to-day activities in the workplace. It provides a sense of direction to the organization. It highlights better and effective utilization of resources in organizations. It leads to better performance. It engages the employees and leads to better productivity in organizations. The major benefit is that it helps to provide a balance between employees' personal life and professional life. Clear-cut policies and procedures that are established for every department in the organization. They set employee expectations with regard to their career growth. They help you to address employee grievances and disputes. They speed up the decision-making process on various HR matters. They help to ensure all employees are treated equally and fairly. So this is about the benefits. When you implement these policies, you're able to get these benefits. In order to get better clarity about the HR policy, right, there are various videos about that, right? So in Swayam or in NPTL, we'll be able to get these videos. So why can't we look into it and gain more knowledge on it, students? So now I'm going to play the a video on HR policies, right? That is said to be telecasted by the VIAS NPTL. Okay, watch it and get benefit out of it.
Hello and good morning friends. Welcome to EduSet Live lecture. Dear friends, as you know, time to time we organize lecture series on different subjects. Dear friends, we have started lecture series on human resource management. Today's second lecture of this lecture series. In today's lecture, we would be talking about organization of HR department and some HR policies. To discuss this topic, we have with us in our studio Dr. Namita Rajput. She is Associate Professor at Sri Aurobindo College. She has more than 4 years of teaching experience, as well as she has authored several books on human resource management. So with this brief introduction, I would like to welcome our guest, Dr. Namita Rajput. Dr. Namita Rajput, welcome to the EduSet Live lecture.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. So today's lecture, I would be concentrating on the HR department organization and the HR policies, and I would be giving you a brief introduction about the government policy which is in this regard. So starting with this, the organization of the human resource department. Today's enterprises are facing with the daunting challenges like political pressures, social pressures, the changing aspirations of the workforce, as the workforce has become very smart. And because of the advent of the information and the communication technologies, they know what they are, what their rights are, what their liabilities are, and what is going around the globe. So with this intent, they have this aspirations which is on a higher scale and increasing on a higher rate. Similarly, we have some in kind of industrial changes which the government is announcing time and again, the social changes which is taking place across the globe because of the liberalization, privatization and the globalization. And because of the mainly the advancement in the technology, there are some glaring issues which are coming up in the present and the contemporary context. Now, because of these challenges which the HR managers has to face, the downsizing, the upsizing, the right sizing, the ethical issues and the social pressures has led to this kind of a strong conviction that the human resource manager has to have an expertise on the subject knowledge of the HR department, the insights of the government policies, the political insights, and so on and so forth. And if the HR manager is not well versed and is having some kind of an inadequate responses in this effect, then of course the organization will suffer a lot. So he has to develop a strong expertise to handle these kind of especially the challenges and the pressures which is glaring the economy time and again. The internal structure of the human resource department is different for different organizations. For this, there is a diverse nature, there is a diverse size, the management philosophy and the external environment. So he means a human resource manager. Specifically, we are talking about the millennium manager. He has to be a good organizer and keeping into consideration these kind of pressures and the challenges which are, this global economy of the present context is facing. Now, the human resource manager are well positioned to play a very vital and exponential role in helping the organization to achieve the major objectives and become a big asset for the human resource department. Now, what is the domain of the human resource manager? He has to implement the strategies, the policies. He has to have a people management activities, which is of course the main domain of the human resource manager. He has to do the human resource planning. He has to understand the talent management aspect of the human resource, because if the present talent is not taken care of, then the organization would be a loser. Then he has to have a knowledge management, that is whatever is happening around, he has to embed that in the culture of the organization. The recruitment, selection, of course, these kind of the traditional functions of the human resource will always be a part and a vital part of the human resource management. Then he has to be a very perfectionist in terms of the development and the learning of the organization. Then the reward management, like if the people are doing well, he has to keep into consideration the reward aspect, because that is a kind of a motivation which has to be given to the human resource people who are obviously a part of the organization. Then of course the employee relationship has to be on the top of the organization. Specifically the domain of the human resource manager, because the employer-employee relationship has to be at peace and there should not be any kind of industrial unrest. And what are the aspirations of the employee and what are the aspirations of the employer has to be synced, and a kind of a trade-off and a balanced approach has to be followed by the HR manager. Then of course the admin part is the main function of the human resource management. Then followed by the equal opportunity, which is definitely that he has to give equal opportunity to all the good people around, so that everybody feels a part and a parcel of the organization, and a kind of a co-partnership feeling prevails in the organization, which is of course a feel-good factor. Then another very vital issue which I would like to highlight is the diversity. So diversity in terms, as it says, that difference. The difference in terms of the generations which are working, the difference in terms of the gender, that is the male and the female. And when you talk about the generational diversity is also one of the, the biggest challenge the HR managers are facing. Like for example, we are having about 4 to 5 generations working at the workforce today. The veterans and the patrons, they are the people who are already, retired, but they are, working as a catalyst and working as a consultants. We cannot undermine the importance of these kind of people. Why? Because of their expertise, they have to incorporate their experience, their enriching, the thicks and the thins which they have seen in the corporate life. So definitely they are very, very vital for the organization. So similarly, we have the people who have seen the war economy. So their work culture is different compared to generation X and Y, which is the pulse of the modern economy. They are having a very diverse work culture. So the motivation skills, the retention strategies, the work culture, of course, is different in the different generations. Then, of course, we have a global environment, which is like the Germans, Americans, Japanese. They're all working under one roof. So what is good in one culture may not be good for the other culture. So these the list is not exhaustive, but yes, these are the vital and the highlight issues which I have expressed in the diversity. So besides diversity, there is one thing which has to be kept in mind. The employment relationships have to be given a due importance to reap up the current fruits of the organization. Now let us have a catch on the hierarchy in the human resource development. So let us see this particular slide. The right on the top, we have the director of the human resources, followed by the deputy director of the human resource staff development, and both of them have a personal assistant. And if we talk about the deputy director of HR department, we have another 4 people: HR executive staff department, HR manager, HR recruitment, HR employee relations. And then of course we have the contracts and the payrolls and the recruitment. So this is what the organization structure of the present day organization looks like. Now they are complementary to each other. So somewhere down the line, a kind of a trade-off approach in which the aspirations of the employees are also met and the aspirations of the employer is also met. Then we have another very important function of the human resource manager, that is compliance. Now acts in terms of the laws, regulations, judiciary, etc., which has been passed by the various acts in the Indian judiciary system and the legislative system. They are very vital, important part of the organization, because when we make the policy framework, these kind of acts cannot be ignored in any case. Then the compliance officers, they do have to play a very vital role to ensure that all the policies and the laws are duly met. Then another important function of the human resource manager is the training and development. Now, training and development is one technique which can actually enhance the capabilities and the potentials of the human resources. So definitely no one is strategize and make the human to the rural residents. So coming on to the transition of this government policy, the earlier concept and the center was a labor intensive economy, whereas with the initiation of these kind of reforms, we adopted more of the capital intensive methods. And of course, owing to these kind of big pressures and the changes and the sweeping changes, we can say, the human resource manager challenges became even more glaring and even more challenging. The thrust to enhance the productivity in the organizations was followed by removing the people who are unproductive, and of course the removal of the people was a big painful thing for the Indian corporate sector, because no one likes to be drained away by the organizations, nobody wants to be fired away in the organizations. But yes, to improve the productivity, this particular strategy was adopted and was basically to reduce the cost and to reduce the unproductive element in the corporate sector. So hence the manager frequently found no options but to reduce the unsuitable and the surplus manpower labor, though it had been emotionally very painful for the managers and for the employees both. So coming on to the impact of these economic reforms on the HR policies, the manpower reduction took place, and of course the center was on the voluntary retirement scheme. The voluntary retirement scheme was offered to the many of the people in the organization. So basically the union leaders also appear to be accepting this kind of a voluntary retirement scheme because they were compensated for the services which have been offered by them. And of course now they do not want them to be a part of the active organization, so they were offered the adequate amount for the loss of the job. Now coming on to what you mean by a policy. As the name suggests, they are the guidelines, they are the framework, they are the boundaries, They are the do's and the don'ts. And of course, everything is optimized and centered in achieving the organizational goals. So, a policy refers to a predetermined course of action, which is basically designed to guide the performance of the employees in a particular direction towards the attainment of the organizational goals. So, the human resource policies are designed very successfully, basically to achieve the objectives of the organization and to provide a framework to the employees so that they are moving in a desired direction. So, summing up the concept of the policies, these policies act as a map to the HR managers which help them in taking decisions regarding the managerial and operative functions of the human resource management and establishing a human resource policy in one of the significant aspects of running a business. The human resource policy refers to the formal guidelines and rules put in place by the organization concerning the hiring, training, assessment, compensation, and the reward of the employees. Now, let us see some kind of definitional part and the aspect of a policy. A policy is a deliberate system of principles to guide decisions and to act a very rational outcome. And of course, since everything is mapped and planned in advance, so whosoever follows a policy, there is no ambiguity, there is no confusion, and everybody says and accepts this that we cannot do anything about it because it's a policy matter. So, to escape any kind of confusion in the organization, to have a free flow of the directional flow of the work, so the policies have to be enriched and have to be very crystal clear, understandable to all, and so on and so forth. So, policies are generally adopted by the board of a senior governing body within an organization. So, we have a governing body in an organization who is responsible for the framing, or maybe the HR department can frame a policy, but the final approval is done by the top level management. Now, let us have some kind of features of the human resource policies. Human resource policies are designed by the human resource department, again, and the top level management. So, there is a consensus which is essentially needed by the top level management because they are the administrative heads of the organization. Then followed by the approval. If they are framed by the HR department, then approval is of course needed by the top level management. The human resource policy contains a code of conduct principles to be followed, the techniques to be followed by the human resources, the improved programs for the employees, etc., which shows the recognized intentions of the top level management. The human resource policies are linked with the human resource objectives of the organization. Now, this is one kind of point which needs some kind of a deep explanation, that whatever are the policies which the departments are framing or in the formulation process, you have to embed into it the basic policies, objectives of the organization. So, policies and the objectives have to be synced with each other so that there is no contrary assumptions in this regard, that is, the organization is going somewhere else and the policies are going somewhere else. So, down the line, the policies have to be strongly synced with the objectives of the organization. Then, of course, the human resource policies are on the general standards on the basis of which the decision making is reached. Now, all these things, that is, we need the human resource policies because they help us in achieving the goals. They are the guidelines for the decision making. For this, the proper administration can take place. We can actually improve some kind of training programs. The control process can be initiated and promoted, and of course, it is easier and it is a facilitator.
So, students, I think you'll be able to get a quite deeper knowledge about from the video regarding the HR policies. Further, regarding the procedures and other things relating to policies, HR policies, we will be seeing in the coming classes. Thank you.